Welcome everyone to this off slash on the record webinar of the ACJR. I'm Molly Jane, the current secretary or board member of this year's ACJR. And today I would like to introduce Naveen Mishra, who is the founder of SuperKey. And we are going to be speaking about the topic, training your blockchain IQ meter, how to verify information from credible third parties. So Naveen, take it away.
Hey all, Naveen Mishra here. Thank you so much for the ACJR team and Molly and everybody, Joyce and everybody to just for having me here. I think this is the right time, given what's happened in the industry, to talk about stuff like this, because everybody at their neighbor has lost money, right? So people are receptive to the idea of, okay, due diligence is not a complete waste of time. So what I thought I would do is I have like four or five slides just to go over the high level topics, and then leave the rest of the time for an open discussion about and questions if anybody had any. So let me just share that screen. I don't think I have screen share.
Okay, hang on one second.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, see if you can do that now.
Okay. There we go. You should be able to see the slides.
There you go.
Yeah, can we see it? Everybody see it? Okay. Yeah, so I think the first thing we have to understand is, as journalists and as analysts, we're already doing a lot of open source intelligence and open source analytics. So the question simply becomes, I mean, it's not a new thing that we have to do. It's just using our skills to the blockchain verticals to get better information. So on a scale of verifiability, things on chain have the highest verifiability and lowest trust, because everybody agrees that it's a common database for trust, and everybody agrees about the facts on chain. And on the other end of the spectrum, with least verifiability and too much noise, is the cacophony of crypto Twitter. So on this scale of verified on chain versus crypto Twitter, we have different levels of verifiability facts. What I think we can do is have a focus on the most important things of who controls what. Think of every crypto project basically follows a set standard of how they operate. It's always a group of people who manage tokens by code that is deployed somewhere. So once we have this mental model, I think it simplifies a lot of the effort of what we have to ask this person. Can we sort of judge what this person is telling us through this filter? And if we focus our questions on who controls what and on the artifacts of what they control, the main things being code, treasury, keys, user funds. Are they custodying user funds? Who controls the website? Who controls the DNS? Who controls the social media? The control aspect, and then how they interact with the government or their local jurisdiction. In plain English, I think we can quickly elevate the conversation where they're giving you the right answers and you're asking the right questions. But what can we do? Block explorers are hugely beneficial. Every project or every L1, so to say, or every base layer has their own block explorer. The information is highly technical and not human readable currently. There are projects to make this information human readable. These things can be spoofed because they rely on code from the blockchain, but as a first layer, asking people to show you their smart contracts on the chain and saying, hey, link me to a third-party block explorer, or if not even a first-party block explorer, that could be one thing. Befriending an on-chain analyst, there's lots of people on crypto Twitter who have varying levels of success and sort of fact-based credibility that they have, but engaging with these people formally can be costly, but if you give them the right problem, they're easily nerd sniped, and they will spend hours to get you the information that we need. just because working with this data is hard and it's not structured for easy consumption, right? A third thing could be forcing disclosure standards and reporting standards. So currently there's minimum disclosure requirements only because crypto supposedly operates on this less regulated side of finance. But as more and more institutions come in, they will force things like insurance. They will force things like standard reporting requirements. So that will also create a certain paper track and a data set track. Also, curating information consumption always helps. So here are the tools that most analysts use. This is a big list of tools, and I can send this to whoever is interested later. So think of blockchain data from on-chain down onwards. That's a good mental model to have. Like we spoke before on the fact and verifiability piece. So blockchain down, so people who give you the raw blockchain data, people who make sense of it, explorers, things like Tenderly and Rotki who do, or Breadcrumbs who do analysis, who do wallet tags, wallet labels. There's a lot of people who do their own labels. Pick your favorite blockchain analyst. They have a private list or a Google sheet or something where they label the things that they're interested in, and they're not sharing that. So maybe a standard there would help. But there's also people like DeFi Safety and Blue Chip who are putting together standards to answer the type of questions that we are interested in. So those are the tools. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a plethora of tools. This is where we come in. This doesn't want to be I don't want to do a shameless self-plug here, but that's what SuperKey does. We curate important data sets like this and we open source them. We write for humans, not degens, and we're building a risk model for blockchains. But again, coming back to the basics, how do we diligence these blockchain projects? Go to third parties, keep asking the same simple questions like we spoke about. Who controls what? What jurisdiction are you in? How are you interfacing with governments? Reject jargon jerks. So you'll often see on crypto Twitter or doing in-person interviews, people go into complicated topics and throw a lot of jargon at you just to confuse you. Or we're optimizing a multivariate thing on a convex plane. No, you're bribing an MEV bot. Okay, I can understand that you're bribing an MEV bot. So just rejecting jargon just on their face and stopping them, nipping that in the bud helps a lot to move the conversation forward. And finally, when we're out, use SuperKey. So that was the presentation part. I would love to sort of have this conversation be open, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we can sort of do a live analysis of a project, or we can just go through questions that we got, or however we want to take it forward from here.
I have one question, even though I'm the host. I'll turn my video on to ask it. So I don't do that much blockchain analysis in my job. Previously I was at Cointelegraph when I was a journalist, and a lot of my journalism was working off of press releases because it was my first job and that's just what I did. But now that I'm like older and more experienced in the space, sometimes my team of newsletter writers do have to dig a little bit more about blockchains and wallets and where the funds are going, especially with everything that's been happening with FTX and wallets,
Right.
et cetera. I guess I'm just curious, why do I guess I'll make this an antagonistic question. Why do I have to believe the blockchain explorers when they mark a wallet as belonging to Alameda or FTX or Coinbase or something? Because it just seems to me sometimes like this blind faith where I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm trusting them to do the due diligence that this wallet is actually attached to this person.
Right.
Should you ever push back on that, or do we just accept that they're right?
No. So you definitely should, right? Here's the one thing about wallets, and I will plug a project at the end of this answer. Every sort of blockchain analysis tool, they have their own set of labels. So if you compare Nansen labels to Etherscan labels to Dune labels, you'll see an overlap, but on the important ones, you'll see a disjointed set, right? So it's always a verifiable issue. Like if you can always use a third party to sort of triangulate what the truth is, and sometimes you can use databases like whenever there's a hack, most of these internal labels get exposed, and those you can sort of use, right? So thinking like a criminal, thinking like to triangulate from third parties, all that always helps. There's also services like ENS where parties sort of self-dox, for lack of a better word, right? So using stuff like that for wallet tagging is always helpful. Yeah, so always try like play one source off of another and see where you land up. So the plug that I forgot, there's a nice group of people who are building something called the Chain Agnostic Standards Alliance. So they're doing very interesting stuff. They're Standards Alliance, but they're also coming up with a way to represent addresses and tags that's chain agnostic. So there's one framework where instead of saying, let's take Tornado Cash, for example, right? So when the US sanctioned it, what they did was they took the 26 addresses or however many from Etherscan and said, okay, here's the list. You know, these things are sanctioned. But how do you know? Why did they not say, is other things on Polygon also sanctioned, right? So if you had a common address standard, people could have said, okay, this address on this network at this time, standard sanctioned by this entity. So yeah, Casa is a good project to have. So sort of keep in mind for this sort of work.
If there are any questions, like I said, please share them in the chat. I'm just going to ask another one because why not? At the end of this year, CoinMarketCap did an end of the year research report, as people tend to do. And one of our contributors was Andrew from Nansen, and his piece was about how 2022 has made more people blockchain analysis experts than ever before. That more like traditional journalists were having to become blockchain sleuths, basically. Have you seen that sort of increase in blockchain sleuthing literacy yourself?
Yes and no. So the issue to keep in mind here is a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So what we have seen across the board is everybody is better equipped to use a block explorer, and they're not afraid to sort of copy paste an address into Etherscan and stuff like this. So the base level literacy has definitely gone up. But again, attackers are also using this sort of knowledge to spoof things like Etherscan. So there's a good blog post by the folks at MyCrypto who sort of detail how a block explorer can be spoofed by like sending 0 transactions or altering the events so that it looks like Vitalik sent something to somebody when in fact it's them doing something. So yes, literacy has increased, and that's a good thing, but so have the attackers sort of the response to that.
So I guess what to take away from that is, even if you think you're a good amateur sleuth, you can be easily tricked, and
Yeah.
there really is, you have to have like a certain level of technicality.
Right. And even the basic sleuthing, I think it's better to have at least be basically literate than not be.
Naveen, we had a lot of people send some questions in to you as they were registering. And some of the topics that the registrants were interested in was gatekeeping and technical lingo. The projects won't admit their fault, and there's a pressure among communities to not call them out until it's too late. We also had people asking about risk, authenticity, independent audits. So I'm wondering if you can address some of those questions. I think one of the interesting topics of discussion here is that projects won't admit fault, and there's pressure not to call them out. And we've seen that over the past couple of months with the Bankman-Fried issue and then the subsequent fallout from there. So what would be your thoughts on what do people do when we're in that type of a situation and you have a project that keeps telling you, no, we're fine. Where do you go? Where are sources that we can go to try to get the facts and verify what these people are saying to us?
That is Thank you for reminding me of that. But that is a big problem, and there's let's divide that problem up into bits, right? So there's the off-chain bit where things like FTX and all the centralized exchanges failing are misusing customer funds. So things that are off-chain are inherently harder to track. Things that are on-chain are inherently easier to track, right? So whatever a project tells you, if it's totally on-chain, let's say Uniswap can make up a story about their equity or that their internal practice or something, but they can't really make something up about the contract execution on chain. So if you give them a transaction hash and say, "Hey, what is this?" They can only give you a straightforward answer or say no comment. So on-chain stuff is easier to track, and it's sort of and that's the job of on-chain sleuths. And you'll see a lot of sleuths on chain who will post a liquidity change on Curve's 3 pool saying, "Hey, something a large liquidity change has happened on this pool, therefore we expect XYZ to happen." That's fairly straightforward. Where it becomes difficult and where folks like yourselves and analysts need to sort of sharpen their game is on the off-chain side of things, right? So if BCG or anybody is using customer funds to do highly risky stuff, uh, so there's only up to a certain point where investigations will work from the technical side, right? You would have to gather facts the usual way of uh, creating assets and sources inside the organization, or using public filings if there's anything like that, or compare what a stablecoin like Tether can say about the blockchain stuff versus something like what the USDC can, what the Circle can say. So that's sort of comparing and contrasting some of the projects and saying, well, this project can say this, but you can't. So what's going on here? So that sort of always helps. Uh, and there's only so much private people can do. Sometimes you need governments to come in and say, if you're a project that does X, Y, Z, you have to register with us and you have to have X reporting requirements. So that's the ultimate goal of this thing. So that's on the calling out bad behavior side. I think people are afraid to call out bad behavior because there's only currently with it, there's only one user cohort, right? It's all speculators. And you can value judge the word however we want, right? But it's all one category of users. So FUD sort of lowers the value of our bags. So that's the main restriction that people have. That's the main issue that people have about calling out some stuff. Because if you call out a fraud and I lose 50% of my net worth, why would I? Right? But if we had a different user base that wasn't speculating all the time, that was using the product for its own sake, then they wouldn't really care, right? They would say, okay, it's the potato. I use it to make chips. I'm not gambling on potato futures, so I don't care. So that would be one solution.
Naveen, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if the other participants were able to hear that. Is anybody else, please put in the chat if you're having any trouble hearing. And we do have a comment there from one of our participants. She said it's become very common to spoof projects someone has interacted with in a transaction or manipulate data on CMC or CoinGecko. How would you vet that kind of data if a project's performance metrics look unrealistic?
That is an excellent question. Actually, thank you. Okay. Okay. So there's two types of spoofing. There's two types of data manipulation. One is a direct manipulation of something like there's an airdrop that the Tornado Cash people did to a lot of. There was an airdrop from Tornado Cash to a lot of people, so they get dusted and they're all now culpable in some way. It's by a third party, but it's an airdrop. It's a public thing, so that sort of thing you can't really do anything against because it's open. A second thing would be where people use custom events to sort of to write something to an explorer which doesn't reflect the on-chain reality. So I'll show you. Okay, showing you. But there's on the MyCrypto blog, you'll see that Vitalik sent 25 tokens to some sushi Iba Inu thing. So that sort of stuff is a little bit harder to track, only because the explorers themselves are not to that state yet. That is improving as explorers become more human readable. There's projects like Join Fire, or there's projects like chain of use who will sort of use third-party data to verify this transaction before showing you. So that's improving. On using like unreliable sources like CoinMarketCap or like less reliable data sources, that's just something that we have to improve as a community. But valuations are simply a metric. Oh yeah, so initial sort of rewards like 3-digit yields just to get users in the initial few stages is always not going to work. Like it's never going to work. So it's just we have to control, like we just say, you can't give me 10,000% yield on something that doesn't work. So like I'm not gonna. It's just a no go. So yeah, greed, lack of reliable data, and block explorers getting better. Give me 1 second. I'll change the audio. But yeah, you can ask me the next question.
So if anybody else has any other questions you want to put in the chat while Naveen is trying to get the audio to go again. And then maybe Naveen can put back up that slide deck and go back to the slide about some of the sources that you might be taking a look at for trying to verify information as you're doing your reporting or trying to just research a project or a story.
Hey, is the audio better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody want to go back on anything that they couldn't hear or get clarification? Feel free to do so.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I just want to say one more thing about getting to data that's verifiable, right? So projects like DeFi Safety and of course SuperKey. So don't mind the shameless plug. They're asking the sort of questions that we want to, right? So, so they're asking about, do you have a process in place to sort of show us who's controlling the addresses? Do you have a process in place to show if the social media is owned by the team, that sort of thing? So just curating that data would help a lot in understanding it better. So that's one thing. Yeah, and what were the other questions we had? Sorry, go ahead.
I think you answered the question about manipulating the data.
Right.
Okay. And the other questions were, hold on 1 second, I'll pull them up. I was wondering if you could go back to your slide deck and possibly put up those resources.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, so we take a look at that. Okay, and risk, authenticity, independent audiences, audits, independent audits. I think those were some of the other questions that we had too. And the other question is, what would be the first question that you might want to ask a founder? Somebody's pitching you a story. It's a new project. It's a startup. You know, how can you, in the first few questions, figure out where you need to go with this, or whether or not you may be talking to a project that doesn't have anything. It's just air at that point in time.
That's the easiest question to ask, right? You always ask for code. Always ask if you have a product that you can see and touch and play with. Like, show me the thing. First of all, show me a project. Okay, we don't have a project. We have just a smart contract deployed somewhere. Okay, show me the contract, right? Can you run me through a transaction to see what it looks like from a user side? Like, having live code deployed on chain or live code running somewhere is always the best option. Once they don't say that, or do you have a white paper? Can you talk to me about what happens in the happy case, what happens in the bad case? Can you tell me what the legal implications are? How much have you thought about these things? With a lot of these projects, there's a lot of bluster about over decentralizing X, over disintermediating some person in the financial stack. And what you end up finding later is they're also re-intermediating their own thing and adding a token that's not necessary, right? So just asking questions about how they've thought through the user's journey, or how they've thought through how much effort it takes for somebody to complete an action, or can they even define what a completed action is? Those sorts of questions will sort of easily get you to where you're trying to go. Also asking, again, simple questions like, who has admin access? You'll see people like Chris Black and a bunch of people asking about admin access about bridges like Polygon, where they will say one thing and on chain it's a separate thing, or they will say one thing and their docs will say another thing. So there was a sort of rehypothecation project who initially, when they were launching, said, "Oh, we're a 5 of 9 multisig." But if you go to their own live documentation, the documentation said it's a 2 of 3. So immediately that's a trust reducing move, right? If your own if you're lying and you have live documentation that says different, like, why would I trust you? So questions like that. Again, having a simple mental model of all these projects, it's a bunch of people who want to play with tokens, who wrote some code and deployed it somewhere. Have that mental model in mind and ask questions about each of those bits and figure out where decentralization actually matters. Whenever they go into a decentralization spiel, just ask them, you're a bunch of people, you're talking to me, so obviously you have some power. So how is it decentralized, right? Or you sold tokens to a VC. What are their expectations? Where's their interest? So questions like that, if they don't run away from you like screaming, okay, you can continue the conversation. The question about audits is a great question, because I think we as an industry have been too focused on code audits as sort of this is good, you can trust it, you can give it your money sort of thing, where even in the audit, the auditors will say, we only did X, Y, and Z. We only did it at this code level. Like, they will give you the commit hash of the GitHub commit that they use the code on. So the code might have changed from what's being deployed. So there's code audits have been like the industry standard, and people like Gauntlet and Llama and all these sort of simulation treasury management people are coming in to sort of audit the financial health of a smart contract or the financial incentives in a smart contract system. But we don't really have a non-code sort of a product review, if you want to call it, of smart contracts or blockchain businesses. And we severely need that. And I hope to sort of answer that question or solve that problem with SuperKey, because that's one of the things we're doing. What will also help, so there was a Colossus is a network of podcasts who have something called the Web3 Breakdown, where Vouch is a Silicon Valley insurance company who's doing insurance for Web3 companies, right? They're just starting their Web3 stack. They're not comfortable doing they're not going to insure a random fork of Uniswap with unpublic founder or something. But what that shows us is there's a lack of a data framework and a risk framework where a third-party insurer can come in and say, okay, this person's doing XYZ. They have these processes, so we can rate them at whatever risk level. And for the amount that you're transacting, your insurance is worth X. I think that will help a lot financially with sort of getting these sort of projects audited. Because once you have insurers, and once you have sort of a financial incentive for somebody to not pay you once the project fails, they will add the non-code audit part. But again, that's a great question that currently we're not solving.
So we just put up on the screen some of the tools, and I'm sure if you're screenshotting, it's great. If not, we'll also post it after the event. So thanks, Naveen, for putting that back up for us again, so we can take that down.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what else did we have? Let me just go through our list of questions. We had audit, we had, another big thing is, this is, again, my favorite topic, decentralization theater, where people say X thing is decentralized, but it's really not. So there's a cybersecurity expert, I don't know how we'd classify her, Sarah Jamie Lewis on Twitter. She's a cybersecurity expert who's I think had the best line on decentralization, right? The only thing that you have to decentralize is power. And with any of these projects, you'll see that the power is concentrated among a few people. So whatever else is decentralized or not, it's theater at the end of the day, right? So again, ask about where the power is located. Oh, where are we? I should just, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, ask about where the power is concentrated, and figure out who are the people that have controlling interests at each level of the stack, right? Years ago, Balaji Srinivasan wrote this post about quantifying decentralization, where they took 6 layers of a stack and they sort of did uh, a quantitative analysis of what decentralization would mean at each level. Again, that was just step one. We have come so much farther in understanding what decentralization actually means. And, it sounds ridiculous to say, but nothing's actually decentralized other than block production, right? And given the concentration of block producers, even that's not decentralized. So if you look at the last, I don't know, 1,000 blocks or something, it's being produced by less than 5 entities on any chain, and that's ridiculous to say. So if the core block production itself only is like it's being done by 5 people or 5 entities, what are you decentralizing here? You know what I mean? So just asking people about, is the power concentrated? Can users act without involvement from the project? Are their funds custodied? So asking these questions at the beginning of a conversation always helps. And like your goal should be to scare the people who are saying that, oh, we're decentralized, that therefore the rules don't apply to us, because decentralization often ends up getting used as an excuse to not follow the rules, right? Oh, we're decentralized, therefore I don't have to provide you a data report. Oh, we're decentralized, therefore your rule doesn't apply to us. Like that's not like that doesn't work. Like either you're actually decentralized or you're not. And if you're decentralized, then you have much more issue with government than just a data requirement. So yeah.
If there are no more questions, then I guess we can think about wrapping up, unless there's any, last things you want to say or share with us, or anyone wants to say or share.
Yeah. So I think what I would, first of all, I would like to thank ACJR just for having me and arranging this thing, right? I think we have, what do you see as a future of the token economy? Okay, so we have a last question. What do you foresee as the future of the token economy, tokenization? So there could be two things, right? There's the purely decentralized, we don't care about your rules, we're just going to live off chain. Sorry, we're going to live on chain, full privacy, I don't care about you, go home, that sort of thing. Where it will be, I think my personal opinion is that that'll be restricted to a few small groups for whom those things are a benefit. I don't want to say the word outlaw here, but people who are outside of the law also don't have the protection of the law. So when these things go wrong, they can't run to the law and say, "Oh, help me, please." So those parts of that part of the decentralized world will help those groups. But a much bigger market is using blockchain rails to bring traditional finance products to non-traditional finance users. That is what used to be called the programmatic finance thesis by A16Z and all these venture capitalists, right? So taking friction out of TradFi and building TradFi products with similar rules, more transparency, less cost, just because it's on one database that everybody can access, is a great use for blockchains and a great use for tokens. So there's apps like Goldfinch who are already tokenizing loans and stuff. So there's a lot of people who are picking off parts of the TradFi stack, tokenizing them, and using the 24/7 single database of a blockchain to sort of deliver better products. So that's one way, and then the completely DeFi, completely anon is the other way. So we'll see that barbelling, and I think we will see products differentiating and becoming better for whoever's using them. So that's one thing. Yeah, and if I would, before I sort of end the session, I would like everyone to just be more skeptical. This is the time to be more skeptical, and again, have a mental model of have a simple mental model of what a blockchain project is actually doing. So it's always a group of people writing code to manage tokens that deployed somewhere, simple as that. Again, we will be putting out a lot of content around mental models and how to simplify thinking about these things so that people aren't dazzled by just jargon and sort of charismatic people. Keep the mental model simple. Keep asking basic questions, and yeah, I think we'll be successful. But yeah, I would again like to thank everybody here at the ACJR. We're part of the team here, so yeah, always happy to help. And if anybody wants to reach out later, my email and Twitter are on the deck. Yeah, happy to help.
Thank you so much for coming here. Yeah, everyone, you can follow Naveen with his information. I'm sure he'll share it in the ACGR public chat as well. And we hope to see you all at our next webinar, I guess. Thank you guys. This was great. First webinar of 2023. So you guys made history.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. I will end this now.